Okay, I'd like to welcome all of you, and Alan was right, it's pretty nasty out there. And so I'd like to, do we have any new members here? Want to stand up and tell us who you are, please?
My name is Harry Barrett, and I just moved into Exeter.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Harry. Harry just moved into Exeter City. Thank you for coming.
They knew he was coming, that's why they came to the building.
That's right. That's right. And I got a phone call before I left. I didn't answer it because I was walking out the door. A woman left a message. She wants to join the club and wants to work. So we're taking off. We're really doing well. Okay? I don't know if we have any VIPs here tonight besides the senator because there's a conflicting meeting. But that's okay. Ours is better. Okay. I have Barney here. She's going to talk about the volunteers and other stuff, and then we'll have the senator.
I have a lot of stuff. Okay, as usual, thank you to all our volunteers. You know, this wouldn't happen without you and all your work. Can I see by a show of hands, who has seen our notices that were posted? Who? Okay, good. I was concerned because we're having a high number of people yanking them down. I replace mine on a daily basis for the week that we give them out till we're here. So I'm glad to know that that's of use. That's what I was checking. So we'll continue to do that.
Bonnie?
Yes?
Rexford does not permit political posts.
Well, nobody's told me that, and it's not posted anywhere.
It's been that way for years.
Nobody has informed me.
President doesn't allow it.
Nobody has informed me. You know.
Well, they told you, but you just haven't figured it out.
All right.
In Lincoln, they pulled them down, so I would request extra, and I put it in all the laundry rooms and.
Yeah. I mean, we follow the rules. If there's a sign that says association notices only, we don't put the notices up. You know, so we're following the rules. So, you know, we'll just keep doing that. It seems like it's a worthwhile effort, so thank you. But we can use some assistance if anybody wants to do it, so if you want to help, just let me know. We're sort of starting presidential primary season a little earlier than I would have thought, but when you have that many people. Just as a reminder, the club will not endorse any candidates, you know, for the Democratic primary for president, but what we will as a courtesy to our membership, we'll always let you know when we're aware of somebody being in town, things like that coming up. So don't take that as an endorsement, it's really informational. So the first presidential candidate that will be in town is Kristen Gillibrand. And she's going to be at an event on Monday, May 13th at the South County Civic Center at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll put this in the newsletter so you'll have that information. So, you know, my feeling is we should hear what everybody has to say. It's going to be a long season and we should keep ourselves informed. So I'm hoping that you guys will show up, and if you want to carpool or something, maybe we could work something out there, so let me know. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's not dark. Another exciting thing, the first Democratic debate's going to be held in Miami on the 26th and 27th with all the players. They have to break it up into 2 days. So the Democratic Club of Boca Raton and Delray Beach will be hosting a watch party. So we'll probably do one for the second or third, but they're going to be hosting one that's going to be in Boca Lago. I will go ahead and include that information in our newsletter. So if you don't get our newsletter, or our email, I guess, just let me know. We'll write down your email address because it's got a lot of information and it's hard to get that information out any other way. Get out the vote and voter registration. Those of you who have been involved, there's a number of you who have been involved with Get Out the Vote, and I think voter registration too. Training will be made available by the Democratic Party. And if you're interested in doing that, you need to attend their training session. And contact me if you want that information. Just use the CVW email address or phone, and I'll get back to you. They have sessions. They're having one on the 11th that's going to be up in West Palm Beach. But starting in June, they're going to be in the Democratic headquarters, which is on Atlantic and Jog. And they're going to have them on a regular basis. Also, an exciting thing for anybody that needs voter registration work for our new people who want to change parties, not that you want to. We're going to have voter registration in the clubhouse on a monthly basis. It's not affiliated with the club, but we're going to have people registering people to vote. For new people, update their addresses, change party affiliation. That's going to be in the clubhouse. I think it's on the second Monday of the month from 10 to 10 to 12. It's when, you have people from Rader and Polsky's office up there. So we can offer that to you. This will also be in the newsletter. Something for all of you to think about. We need precinct captains. We need 2 precinct captains from each precinct. We have 3 precincts here. What you need to do as a precinct captain is get out the vote for your precinct, build a team of people to go door to door, do canvassing. You'll be using the computer system they have, but don't be afraid, you don't have to use the computer system. You would have access to it though. You'd be a voting member of the DEC. So if you're interested in stepping up and working in that capacity, let me know. We're just looking for people who are interested. We'll give you more information there.
Bonnie,
Yeah.
what's the DEC for?
Oh, I'm sorry, the Democratic Executive Committee. They meet monthly, actually tonight. That's kind of the committee that runs the Palm Beach County Democratic Club, and they vote on things, and this will be part of the voting body. Let's see. Let's see. This is the last week of the Florida legislative session. I believe it ends tomorrow. This hasn't been a pretty session.
No, I think they're going through Saturday.
Oh, they're going through Saturday? Okay. It hasn't been good. In my opinion, it hasn't been good. So we really have to work locally, and we have to start we're good here. We have good representation here. We need to start working in the other districts and start having an impact there and hit the street there. So we'll see what we can do with that, because that's really the way we're going to change things, because they do the gerrymandering. They are responsible for laying out the districts. That has impacts on our congressional choices. That's everything, so we need to start doing that. Okay, petitions. We have our Medicaid expansion petition, our assault weapons ban petition. We've had a number of people sign them today. If you haven't signed them, they're back there. Make sure you sign the back. It's a 2-sided thing. So if you didn't sign the back, please do so. And our next meeting is going to be on a Sunday, June 2nd. I know a lot of people are interested in that. We don't have a program yet, but we'll put together a good program for you, and we'll bring bagels as well. So we'll get that done. All right, that's it for me. Anything I said that you do not remember will be in our newsletter. So make sure I have your email address.
Thanks, Bonnie. I'd like to thank all the volunteers, and especially Bonnie and Carol for all the work that they do. I'd like to thank Judy Milligan, who, as we all know, runs Century Village for Sen West. She gave us permission to. Bonnie asked me if I could help out, and Judy gave us permission to use the clubhouse. We asked for the second Monday because that's when all the governmental people will be there. So we'll get a lot of people for registration. But if Bonnie and any of you feel that we want to go at another day, she probably could be, she'll work with us. So I'd like to thank you on the record, to thank Judy for her help. Tonight, we have a speaker who's our former Senator Maria Sachs. And when she first talked about this, I said, okay, we'll see. But now it's in the news every day, especially with Robert Kraft from the fellow who owns the Patriots, and it's raising awareness about human trafficking. And that seems to be the topic today, besides other political things, but that's it. So I'd like to introduce a friend of ours, Senator Maria Sachs. Thanks, Senator.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, I told some of you, thanks, yeah, that I might tell you a joke. But I also said I'm not a very good joke teller. So if you've heard this one, just laugh. Don't let anybody know you've heard it before. So Bob and George are good friends, and they're getting on in age. So Bob says to George, do you think there's baseball in heaven? And George says, I don't know. what do you think? He says, Bob said, I don't know. Well, which one of us goes first is got to come back and tell the other one. Okay. So George passes away. Bob says, wow, I wonder if he'll come back and tell me. Sure enough, he does come back. He says, good friend Bob, I got good news and bad news. He says, what's that? Well, the good news, there is baseball in heaven. So, well, what's the bad news? You're scheduled to pitch next Tuesday. Oh, I know, I had to keep it clean. Anyways, I'm Maria Sachs, and I'm your speaker tonight. And thank you for coming out in this rain. Rain was one thing, but when I heard the thunder, I was a little concerned. But I'm here, and I'm here because of your leadership. Your leadership. You know, I have been in politics many, many years, started in high school. And I know that if an organization is going to be successful, you got to have great leadership. And everybody knows that. Anyone who's in business knows that. So, Bonnie, thank you for all you do to make this club one of the finest in the county. And that's not easy. We got a lot of Democrats, we got a lot of competition. There's also a couple of fellas up here that are pretty darn tough. I know that because I had to work with them when I was in the Senate. And when they called, they wanted things now. So I was, and you know, I'm talking about Stan and Mike Limoncello. And Stan, I didn't know you were going to be here tonight, really, but I knew Mike was.
Surprise.
I know. And the reason I say that is because I was shopping, and you know, I shop at Costco. And I know, who doesn't, right? It's a great place to shop. And I was walking down the aisle the other day, and I was thinking, gee, what am I going to say? And all of a sudden, I saw some candies, and I said, look at those candies. Mike, could you open these up and tell us what that says?
Limoncello chocolate almonds.
Limoncello chocolate almonds. Now, I'm not going to ask you to open it right now, otherwise I'll pass it around. But they're very, very good. We love you, Mike. You've done a great job for everybody here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I've represented this group for 10 years, and we've seen a lot of changes. And some of the changes that we've seen, we're going to work on a little later. Some of the changes with regard to traffic in the front and right here on Lyons Road. There was a report out from the Florida Department of Transportation that said the busiest street, county street in the county. You know, we have the largest county in the state. Palm Beach County is the largest county in the state. The busiest street in the state is right here, Lyons and Atlantic. So you know that's going to affect the folks right here at Century Village. So we need to make sure that we stay on top of whatever changes, and I know that between Stan and Mike, we will find out about it, so we make sure that it's safe for us to pull out. I want it to be safe because my father-in-law lives here. Sam Sachs is a resident here of Century Village, and next week is his birthday. I wanted him to come tonight, but he's going to be 99 next week. So I gave him a pass. But one day, and maybe in the afternoon, he'll come out. He's a Holocaust survivor, and he lives right here, and he is so happy. He's at Guilford. So ladies, feel free to come by and knock on his door anytime. Can't say he's harmless, but he sure is a lot of fun. Good guy. Human trafficking is something that is as old as society. But it has never been as bad as it is today. And the reason that it's proliferated is because, one, people are getting away with it, and two, because of the internet. It's the internet. So what's happening? What is all this thing about human trafficking? What is human trafficking? Some people think it's prostitution, and it's not prostitution. Prostitution is a crime. It's a second-degree misdemeanor. I was a prosecutor for many years, and I'm a, Pat, what's that? It's all right.
Careful how you pronounce that.
You can, prosecutor, not, I'm not gonna say from personal experience, it's all right. I was a prosecutor. That's okay. And anyways, we learned a lot about what was going on. That was with Janet Reno in Miami-Dade. There was a lot of it going on. Prostitution, a lot of it was going on. Human trafficking was not made a crime to 2004. Can you imagine all these years of this scourge, and it wasn't made illegal until 2004? Now, what is human trafficking? If it's not prostitution, what is it? It is the forcing of someone by duress or power or confrontation to perform acts they don't want to do. Now there's labor trafficking, but the one that has begun the greatest rise is the sex trafficking. So what occurs is that a lot of people think the sex trafficking occurs in other countries. Not here. This is the United States. We don't have it, but we do. And guess which state? Yes. We're not the first. California's the first. Texas is the second. But we are the third highest number of human trafficking incidents. Third. So how does it happen? I mean, what are these kids that are brought in from other countries? Is what a lot of people think this. No. They're American kids. And this is how it happens. 13-year-old girl is living in New York. Her mom is shooting up. She's a drug addict. She doesn't know where her dad is. Boyfriends come in and out. The mom. Some of them are even hitting on her. She gets disgusted. She doesn't know what to do. So she steals a credit card, puts a couple of bucks in her pocket, and gets a Greyhound bus. Now, where does this little girl go? Florida. She's not going to Chicago. She's not going to Detroit. This little girl is going from the Northeast right down to Florida, to the beaches and the sunshine. Well, by the time she gets here, she still has some money, and she's doing okay, she's making friends, but then the money runs out, and hunger comes in. There's nothing worse than being hungry and being a teenager. So you can kind of see that she's getting desperate. And as she gets desperate, some nice lady in a minivan drives down the street and sees her. Opens the window and says, "Hey, honey, you hungry? You want to come with me? We'll go to McDonald's." She looks up, she sees it's a lady. It's a minivan. She says, "Well," if she's hungry, "I'll go." Gets in the car. She's not seen again. She's never seen again. The people who are trafficking, who lure the kids in, the majority are women. Because they're working for the guys, and they pull the kids in. And each kid is worth a lot of money. A lot of money, especially American kids. So, what have we learned? We've learned that Florida is the #3 state, and we've learned that most of the kids who are trafficked are American kids. What happens is they get involved in these, sometimes they have opioid addictions, and when a young boy can't pay anymore, because his insurance, these are $2,500 a day. And our very, very good state attorney, Dave Ehrenberg, has been working very hard in trying to get rid of these opioid houses. But when a guy can't pay, he gets thrown on the street. When a girl can't pay, she goes to the back room. And she's used. So this is an area that has always been very delicate because nobody really likes to look at it. It's so ugly. And yet if we don't know it and face it, we won't be able to get rid of it. The internet comes in. How many of you have heard of back pages? Okay. I was once giving a speech and I mentioned back pages. Somebody raised their hand and said, well, I know back pages. And the lady sitting next to him said, how do you know back pages? He said, well, I read about it, you know. Back pages is a internet site that's now offline. The government took it off, which is pretty impressive when you think about it, because they never take anything offline. And what it did is it advertised everything that was, a lot of things that were illegal. And part of what was illegal that they were pushing was the sex trade. So the way this works is this. Somebody would go on Backpage and they'd find a place and they'd say, well, you know, I'd like to have this kind of a kid. And they pay online and then they get a site, an address. And they go to the address. And you know these little motels that you see along Federal and Dixie sometimes? And I always wonder, how in the world can these places exist? I mean, who goes to these motels anymore, where you put your car right up to the door and you get a key and you're right there and the air conditioning is going on all the time? These places, if you notice, they have a lot of cars there. So many of them, and I'm not saying all of them, but many of them were sites of human trafficking. So that this person would get the key and go into the room and have as much time as they had paid for. And there was a victim inside that motel room. So this was going on here in Florida, back and forth. And it's not until recently, and again, Dave Ehrenberg and our good sheriff, Rick Bradshaw, has been doing a big job in trying to cut this. Because, you know, the #1 cash business in the whole world, it's not drugs, it's not guns, it's human trafficking. It's human trafficking, cash business. So it's big time. So let's look at something that happened just recently. Right here in Palm Beach County and in Martin County. And you know, I'm talking about the Orchids of Asia massage parlor. When I was in the Senate, I passed a number of bills because we found out that there were a number of massage parlors that were opening and the girls were not really legitimate. Either they were very, very young or they were here and they didn't want to be here. They thought they were coming to America to get a job, you know, as a waitress or in the retail industry, and then they get caught up in this. So we made a law, and we said in the law that every person who works in a massage parlor has to be licensed. Same thing with nail salons. And ladies, when you go into a nail salon, or gentlemen, when you go in a nail salon, look and make sure that the person's picture is on that certificate from the Department of Business and Professional Regulations. And then make sure that the picture is not pasted on. Okay? Because that's the law, that every person who works in a massage parlor or in a nail salon has to be registered with our State Department of Business and Professional Regulation. Just to protect everybody. So, let's go back to what happened here in this big news in the world about the Orchids of Asia specials. Nothing wrong with massage parlors. I think everybody likes to have a nice massage. But what happened in this particular massage parlor, and a number of them were owned by the same people, is that they were using labor that the sheriff said were brought from other countries and forced to work there. Now, how did they find out these ladies were forced to work there? Anybody know? They took their passports. They did. They took their passports, so they couldn't leave the country. They couldn't go back home. But they were also living right there in the massage parlor space. They found their clothes, they found their toiletries. They were living right there. They couldn't leave. They were prisoners there. They were prisoners. So, now when I was a prosecutor, not the other thing, but a prosecutor, you thought you were going to get a better story today, I know that. When I was a prosecutor, it was pretty tough to bust prostitution rings. And I'll tell you a story. I didn't like the fact that the girls would come in, the prostitutes, alleged prostitutes, and they were tired. They had kids. They were beaten up. Some of them were beaten up. You could see, they had bruises. And their johns, their pimps, not the johns, the pimps were in the back of the courtroom. And they were, bonding them out. So the girls would pick up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and the pimps would be there at 7 a.m. bond hearing, putting the money down and getting them out and putting them back in the street. I could see that the girls were tired. So I said, Your Honor, there's no bond. There's no bond. They got to stay in jail. The judge looked at me. Of course, there were all men judges in those days. I was one of the first female prosecutors. He looked at me and he said, Miss Lawrence, do you know what you're doing? I said, I think I do. There's no bond. They stay in. So the girls are like, oh man, we don't want to stay in. We want to go back out. The pimps are all upset. But when the girls went back to the jail, I made a couple of phone calls. I called the medical examiner, Ronald Wright, and I said, Dr. Wright, do you have a couple of OBGYNs? I need some medical personnel to come into the jail and examine the girls and clean them up, take care of them. And then I called career counseling. I said, could I have a couple of folks over here to teach these gals how to do, in these days, it was before computers, to do shorthand and learn how to type so they can get a job when they get out. And then I called my beauty shop and I told her the situation. She said, Maria, we're down there. We'll do nails, we'll do hair. I said, you're going to be in the county jail. She says, do you think it's the first time? So I didn't ask any other question. So 10 days they were in. They got free medical, got cleaned up, got their hair, their nails done. They began to look like ladies, and not ladies of the night. And they got started on getting a job, because many of these ladies had kids. They needed to make a living. So when they came up after the 10 days, the pimps were waiting in the back of the courtroom. And I said, Your Honor, they've been in, and the judge looked at me and he said, you better let these girls out now, because this is costing us a lot of money, having them in there for 10 days. I said, no problem. I said, the state drops all the charges. He says, now what are you doing? I said, Your Honor, it takes two to tango. Unless I see a John here who's ready to testify against these ladies, we don't have a crime. And if we don't have a crime, they can all go home or go wherever they want to. And that started a whole policy in the state attorney's office in Miami-Dade that you need two to prosecute and convict for solicitation of prostitution. They weren't too happy about it, but we began to help the victims. And that's what I wanted to do when I went to the Senate. So when I went to the Senate, I made a bill, and I had a lot of help, because let me tell you something, folks, nobody does anything on their own in the state legislature. You gotta cross the aisle and get your Democratic buddies together and work on it. But this is the law, and this is a good law. Whoever takes advantage of a person and makes them a victim of human trafficking, we'll find you, and then we will fine you for 3 times the amount of profits that you made on that person. They got to pay. So it's called racketeering in human trafficking. So that money goes into a fund to help the victims get better. And that's the whole idea from way back years ago when I said, these gals are tired, working the streets, let's see if we can't help them out a little bit. So what happened with Kraft is interesting. This was a sting operation. So instead of using undercover girls to lure the men in for human trafficking or prostitution, what they did is they put cameras. This is an old law enforcement device. There's a camera, and many rooms will have like a fan and a light. So they put the camera right above the light, and it films everything straight down below. So they were able to get in on a Department of Health roost that said that they had a problem. So they put the cameras up. And then the cops waited and watched for 2 weeks and recorded these. Now, but they wanted to get Kraft, you see. And this is where it gets interesting. If you like mysteries, it's kind of interesting. They wanted to get Kraft. And they saw this guy who looked like Kraft go in and out of this massage parlor. But they said, how do we know it's him? How do we know it's him? We only have naked pictures of him, you know? So what they did is they stopped his limousine-driven Bentley on the outside as he left. And they said, could we see your driver's license? Now, that was the day that Kraft was going to play the Super Bowl, okay? So he said he was in a pretty good mood. He said, hey, officer, if you want, you know, we got to watch the Super Bowl today because I'm going to be there. So they got his driver's license, so then they knew it was Kraft. So now they're going through this whole legal thing about what to do about it. The bottom line is this. We have to be aware of this human trafficking here because it's happening in Florida. And the number 1 city it's happening in Florida is where? Don't you know? Because I know you've heard this speech before. Where do you think is the number 1 city where more human trafficking takes place than any other city in Florida? I thought it was Miami, but it isn't. It's not West Palm Beach. It's Orlando. Mickey Mouse Land. It's Orlando because there's so many people coming in and out all the time from so many different countries that they can't even control it in Orlando. So what we need is and I have a little pass out here. I'm going to leave as you leave. And it tells a little bit about what you can do if you see somebody who you think could be a victim of human trafficking. And the first thing I always tell everybody is don't approach the person. Just leave them alone and contact law enforcement and they'll take care of it. And one other thing is that another law that we passed with the help of Senator Abruzzo and Representative Kerner is in every airport in the state of Florida, in the women's bathroom, I haven't checked the men's yet, but I'm sure in every woman's bathroom there's a sign. And the sign says, if you think you're a victim of human trafficking, call this number. It's only in 2 languages. I wanted it in 5, and I wanted them bigger. Has anyone seen one of these signs? Yeah. I look all the time. It should be in bus stops, train stations, every airport in Florida. And if you don't see one, and you're in bus station, train station, let me know. Call somebody up. Say I didn't see the sign. Because we're hoping that people, when they go into the bathroom and they're alone, they can give somebody a call and get some help. So I want to thank you so much for allowing me to tell a little bit about this modern day slavery. And it's something that's happening, you know, we used to say it's happening in Florida, it's happening in our neighborhoods. And if you see anything, say something. And I have the telephone numbers on the second page of this little pass out. It was very nice to meet you all tonight. It was very nice, thank you. Are there any particular questions? Yes.
Senator Sachs, thanks for coming to Century Village. I did hear your speech on this subject at the United South County Democratic Club approximately a month or so ago. And at that time, the case that you referred to involving Jupiter and Martin County Orchids of Asia was still a breaking story. And the information wasn't quite in yet, but since your last appearance on this subject that I heard, a number of facts have come out that I really think you need to update your information. First of all, no one in Martin or Palm Beach County has been charged with human trafficking in connection with this sting operation. Second of all, it was not a health department ruse. It was a phony, suspicious package report that for some reason or other the police only cleared out the spa and not the stores next to it, which shows how phony it was. Third of all, they were not looking for Robert Kraft. He was being chauffeured, which is, I don't know why they'd be looking for his driver's license. You don't have to produce a driver's license if you're not driving. And they had no idea it was Robert Kraft. They did a police state tactic, meaning a phony car stop, because the man walked out of this spa and got into a limousine in the back. And they figured this has got to be a high roller. They didn't know who they were dealing with until he started showing off his Super Bowl rings. Thank you. Now, much as I like Prosecutor Dave Arenberg, and I think he's done a tremendous job on the opioid situation, I really feel that he's messed up big time on this case. This is a case of prosecutorial overreach. You keep talking about girls in these spas. One of these sex trade workers was 58 years old. The others were in their 30s. There were no girls in the spa. Yes, there was evidence of cooking and sleepover. That does not prove human trafficking. It just shows you have a nice boss that's tiding you over maybe if you can't find a place to stay. So I really think you need to address the fact that this case has become fake news and is very, very harmful because it's going to tend to bring skepticism on the real human trafficking. And I really wish you would address that fact, that no charges have been brought, and that, oh, the other thing I want to tell you is a class action lawsuit by men that went into this for a therapeutic, non-sexual massage. There is such a thing. And this was a storefront in a very upscale strip mall. It wasn't a back alley place. These innocent men, and they joined in a lawsuit, had their rights horribly violated by these hidden cameras that in an area where they could expect every reasonable expectation of privacy, a therapeutic massage table, that every physical attributes have been committed to video. There are at least 5 copies of these videos, and the prosecutor was refusing to destroy this, saying that there's a sunshine law. Something terrible has gone wrong here, and we as a society have to guard against these types of overreaches by the prosecutor and police state tactics. And thanks very much. I know I spoke a long time, but I'm very upset about what's going on, especially because I do care very much for Dave Arenberg and think he's a otherwise very able prosecutor, but some kind of apology needs to be made, and this evidence needs to be suppressed. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I think that, I think Dave Ehrenberg is doing a great job, but I want you to understand this. This is a state crime and a federal crime. A state crime and a federal crime. Human trafficking is a federal crime when it involves bringing people in from other countries. So we had FBI agents, and we had special agents with anti-terrorism groups. Because let's not forget that when people come into our country illegally, whether it's for working in a massage parlor, or whether it's getting into Mar-a-Lago, or whether it's infiltrating our computers, this is something that we leave up to the FBI. The FBI is investigating this case. I don't know what their investigation has revealed. They're not going to tell us. But when it is, then we'll find out. But until then, let the federal government investigate this. Because I'd rather have a strong FBI investigation than to leave some of this to chance. This is our neighborhoods, and we need to make sure they're clean. Yes, ma'am.
I thought you were going to emphasize coming across the Mexican border because you hear so much of that.
There's a lot of...
I didn't do it. He
No,
did.
that's okay. The question was about children coming over from the Mexican border. There are thousands of unaccompanied children that are coming in from, but we can't get those numbers yet. Because if you remember when Lois Franco tried to get over into those camps, they didn't allow her in. And neither was Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So we don't even know how many thousands of unaccompanied children there are. We do know this, that some of them are used over and over again. Because if you have a, quote, family, that is a man and a wife and a kid, that's a family and they get special rights when they come in, but they remove the children from the parents. And that's terrible. So we don't even know how many thousands of children are there right now. And yes, many of them are victims of human trafficking. But until we can get that open down there, and get some really strong Democrats that can, with Lois Franco and Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Ted Deutsch, to get in there and crack that thing open, we won't know. Yes, sir.
Whether the gentleman believes it or not, the people who he claims are innocent victims of a police state were engaging in prostitution. Whether they went there for a therapeutic massage or they went there for anything else, if somebody offered them services that were not on the menu regularly and were illegal, it is up to them not to partake. They did, they committed a crime. Prostitution is illegal in this state. I don't think the state owes anybody an apology, other than the women who may or may not have been forced into doing what they were doing.
Thank you for that opinion. Thank you, sir. It's always good to get our opinions out, whether we all agree on them or not. That's why we're Democrats, right? Yes, ma'am.
I would just be interested to know how you can identify on an airplane. There's been several cases where someone, the stewardess usually notices that there's an older man with a younger woman. So a lot of us fly, go up north, whatever. So is there any way that you can sort of think about that?
The question is a good question, and that is, how can you tell if somebody is a victim of human trafficking if you're flying back and forth? It's very difficult. One of the indications that we have found is that a person who's a victim of human trafficking will have a tattoo. And the tattoo is a barcode, usually on the neck. A woman, sometimes a boy, or a young man. And when these are cartels that run these human trafficking groups. And they're able to read the barcode of where the person is coming from, where they're going, all kinds of information. So, and this is used in our state attorney's offices because they'll pick kids up and young women and men for prostitution, but they're not sure But that's one of the indications, is when there is a tattoo of a barcode. That's one of the indications, is that person is being trafficked. And, but it's difficult. It's difficult, and I've spoken with, I was on the gubernatorial task force, and one of the issues that we had was, how can you tell the difference? And sometimes the people who are victims don't say it because they're scared. They're scared. And sometimes the people who are not victims will say they're victims. So it's a very tough situation for any law enforcement to decipher who's who and what's what. So that's why this investigation in Martin County with Sheriff Snyder and our Sheriff Bradshaw is continuing. And it will continue for a while because it's so complicated, so complex. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your passion on these issues. Yes, you did have a question.
I want to refer to an old movie that I watched years ago, and it's connected with World War II, where there were American men who asked for younger women from Europe to come to New York because they would find husbands for them. And when they came, they made prostitutes out of them. And then one of them had a child. And then she became a grandmother, and she told the granddaughter what these guys had done to so many women. So she took it upon herself to go to college, and she had the names of all these men, and she killed the grandchildren of
Really?
these men who were into prostitution, from Jewish women from Europe
Back and forth.
to the United. No, not back and forth. Once you left World War II, you're out, that's it.
It was interesting. There's as I said, this is
I
an
can't
old.
remember the name of the movie.
Does anybody know the name of that movie? Well, I'm going to tell you a personal story. My dad was a Army infantry World War II, and he fought in North Africa, and then he got wounded, and they sent him to Italy. So sending him home, they sent him into Italy. And when he was in Italy, he met my mom, who was 16 years old. And my mom was living as an Italian in Naples, Italy. My dad is American. And he met her, and he fell in love. And he wanted to marry her. And so there were laws in Europe, in Western Europe, that when American soldiers wanted to marry European girls, that they had to go home first. And so my dad they got married in Italy, an Italian ceremony. My dad didn't speak a word of Italian, but he went home first. And then the law was, if you still wanted your war bride, then they would come over in a ship, these big British ships would bring all these war brides, French, Italian, girls, young women who had married American soldiers. And this story is cute because my mom, who didn't know that much English, my dad didn't know much Italian, she thought she was going to New York because every Italian wanted to go to New York. And so she kept waiting, in the boat to see the Statue of Liberty. And he was there in New York to greet her when the boat landed. They'd kill me if they knew I was telling you the story. And it was a big hug and kiss. And then he gets in a car and he drives west. And she kept saying, Brooklyn is so far. And I didn't know it was so far from Manhattan, Brooklyn. And no, it was Michigan. She never forgave my dad, although she was married like 50, 60 years or so. She kept thinking she was going to live in New York, and then she ended up in Michigan, so.
Looks just like Brooklyn.
Yeah, like Brooklyn, a little bit far west, because it's so far away, it's a big city, But that must be a good story, because there were a lot of, look at folks, this is a terrible thing.
But the granddaughter took revenge for what was done to her grandmother and other women from Europe.
During those days, it was tough.
I wonder how many are doing the same thing today.
My mom is still alive, I don't want to ask her. She's
I
still
mean-
looking for New York.
No, I mean from people who are put into
Were.
yeah,
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up.
slave labor and prostitution and stuff like that.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question about, do you think that girls who are trafficked know that these girls are trafficked? And if they do know, do you think that they should be about time they took some responsibility for it? Because it's, it's supply and demand. If the men weren't going to these young girls or to these people, then they wouldn't be available because we wouldn't be able to sell them like that. Do you think most of them know or they
Good
don't?
question. In my years of being a prosecutor, there are no mistakes made on the streets. That this is a trade, and it is a trade that most people know exactly what they're doing in terms of who's buying. And it's not only men, there's also women too. But it's a trade, and it's a business, and it's a big business. And that's why I work to pass the law that anybody who's using people, boys, girls, men, women, whatever, to make money, that money needs to go back to the victims to pay for the rehabilitation. Because to them, it's about the money. And that's where I think we need to hit them, is in the money. Get the money from them, we stop the business. And that's what it's all about. And these victims need a lot of rehabilitation. And there are places here in Palm Beach County, Boca Raton, the place of hope. We have a lot of good shelters here, ladies and gentlemen. If you ever want to have any speakers come and talk to you about it, I'd be more than happy to provide them to your leadership, because we do amazing things here in Palm Beach to help the victims of human trafficking, to get back on their feet again. And I also have to say that Congressman Lois Frankel did an amazing job in passing a law that said that they don't need to be shipped out as illegal aliens, that they get a special visa to stay here in the United, as long as they help to prosecute. As long as they help to prosecute, they can stay in our country and prosecute and testify against the bad guys. And then if they want to, they can stay or they can return to their country. Thank you very much.
One more.
Yes, go ahead.
I was reading on the internet about American Indian young women who are disappearing, and the police department is doing nothing for them. Do you have any information on that?
I don't know that much about the Indian tribes. She asked about the Indian tribes. And I think that it's a shame, because that happens in cities in Mexico too. All the women are gone. All of a sudden everybody wakes up, or the Boko Haram in Africa, where they steal all the women.
And the police is supposedly not doing anything to help them because they're American, they're natives.
We gotta work hard, don't we? We gotta get the right people elected to office. As Democrats, we're all gonna work hard towards that, aren't we? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Very interesting. And that concludes our meeting tonight. Thank you very much for coming. Look forward to seeing you. What's the date? June 2nd, right? On a Sunday in the right here. 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock in the morning, and we'll have bagels and coffee.
If you get back and you still see the sign up, please take it down. It's old now. Take down the sign that says there's a meeting tonight.